In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to create a contrast-coded variable in jamovi. In this data set, we have a variable here. This is SAT, so this would be considered a dependent or outcome variable. We have a group variable that specifies students who took an SAT prep course. Each of these students have the word course in the group variable, and then those who didn't take the course have no course, again, as a word. Here we have a dummy coded variable. With everybody who took the course has a 1, and then everybody who didn't take the course has a 0. So this is what is known as a dummy code. So what we're going to do in this video is create something called a contrast code. And I'm going to show you actually two different ways to do this. We're going to create the contrast code in reference to this group variable first. So I'll demonstrate again how to create a new variable based on a string variable. And then I will show you how to create this contrast code from the dummy coded variable, which takes a numeric input. Okay, so to create this new code, we are going to double click the top of this empty column. We're going to select compute variable. And then we need to give this new variable a name. So I'm going to end up using what are called fractional contrast codes. So I'm going to call it group underscore fractional contrast. Okay, and then you can give this variable a description. So I will call this a fractional contrast coded group variable. And here I'm actually going to specify what the numbers are going to correspond to in terms of group membership. So with this fractional contrast code, everybody who's in the course group, I'm going to give a 0.5. So course equals 0.5, and then no course will be a negative 0.5. So in terms of making sure it's a contrast code, it's a contrast code when the weights of the code, so the 0.5 and the negative 0.5 in this case, if you sum those codes, they sum to 0. So 0.5 plus a negative 0.5 sums to 0. It's fractional because going from one code to the other is a 1-unit jump. So for example, going from no course, negative 0.5, to course, a 0.5, is an increase of 1. And that's what makes it a fractional code. So put together, this is what's known as a fractional contrast code. And there are a lot of convenient features to having fractional contrast codes. That's why we're going to learn how to create them in this video. So again, I'm going to use the if function. So I'm going to scroll down to find the if function. Here it is. So I'm just going to double click it. So here we have, again, this if function wants 3 things from you. So the first one is the kind of the initial expression. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to use the original group variable. So just another place to look for the variable names are right here, just to make sure you spell them correctly. You might even be able to double click them. Let's see. Yes, you can double click them. I suggest double clicking them to avoid typos. So group, and then again equals, you need to do 2 equals sign, not 1. Jamovi will yell at you if you do 1, or it won't know what you're trying to do. So group equals, and then again we're going to use this original group variable, which is a string variable. So we're going to give it the word course, and to do this we need to put it in single quotation marks. So course. Okay, so that's the expression. So now we need to tell it what to do if that expression is true in the next section. So separated by a comma. So again, looking back at our codes, how we're going to code this. So if it is course, we're going to give it a 0.5 for this new variable. So if true, give this a 0.5. If it's not true, which is the last piece that we need to give this function, if this is not true, we're going to give it a negative 0.5. Okay, so now it's done, and if we click away, this should create the new variable, and it doesn't look like it's doing it. And I don't know why. Did they not like me? Oh, they didn't like me clicking on the variable group. So if I type it in, it works. That is crazy. Okay, so that's one way to create the fractional contrast code. Here's our new variable right here. I'm still learning jamovi, so that's why I was surprised by that. So I'm going to create the same variable, but I'm going to use the group dummy as a reference. And this is just to demonstrate the difference between using a string variable as a reference as opposed to a numeric variable as a reference. So this is already, looks like it's ready to go. So double clicking this column, we'll get these options. So we're going to compute a variable. So this is going to be essentially the same variable. So this group fractional contrast. I'm just going to give it a slightly different name. So I'll just do 2, just so there's a different name. Again, give it a description. So a fractional contrast coded group variable. Okay. And again, let's do course equals 0.5, no course equals negative 0.5. Okay, this is just the same way we did the previous variable. Again, we're going to use the if function. This is an explanation of how to use it here. Double click. You really don't have to double click. You could just type this whole thing in if you want. But double clicking just makes sure you're doing everything correctly. So within the parentheses, again, we're going to give it the initial expression. But this time we are going to use group dummy as our reference variable, or as our source variable, as jamovi calls it, instead of the group variable. So let's type group underscore dummy. Again, now I'm going to type it because it didn't seem like jamovi liked me double clicking over here. So I'm just going to type it and make sure there are no typos. Group dummy, 2 equal signs. Okay. And so again, course, we're going to give a 0.5. So with the group dummy, a 1 represents the course group. Okay, so group dummy equals 1. If that's true, we want this new variable to have a 0.5. If that's not true, we want in this variable to be a negative 0.5. Okay, and that, if you click away, and then you see that it populates. Okay, so you should see how this is slightly different than using the original group variable, because we just used a number right here. Sorry, this first part. Rather than a string variable. So that is 2 ways to create fractional contrast codes, or really any kind of contrast code within jamovi.